more, but imagine these two. We have the Einstein brain and we have the Frankenstein brain. And when fear gets activated, let's assume that that's our Frankenstein brain going, what if? What if you get hurt? What if you lose money? What if you die? What if you get embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, or judged? And so why does Frankenstein even get activated? Because we're not born with those fears. And so if we're not born with those fears, that means that something in our brain is triggering this reaction automatically without our thought. And that is what we call as the fear response. And we also know that that fear response causes something called the sympathetic nervous system to activate, which causes us to want to fight, freeze, or run away. That's just the absolute reaction at a biological level of what is happening. Now, when we want to deactivate that sympathetic nervous system, there's several what I call our exercises that we can do that actually gives us more control, more power, and the ability to reactivate the Einstein part of the brain. So exercise number one is really, really simple. It's called Take 6, Calm the Circuits. So as soon as you catch yourself in a state of doubt, fear, worry, anxiety, stress, that means that Frankenstein's activated. If you just took 6 deep breaths in through your nose as slowly as you could, and then you exhaled as if you're exhaling through a straw in your mouth. If you just did that 6 times, that very simple exercise would deactivate the Frankenstein brain and allow you to reactivate your thinking, imagination, Einstein part of your brain. And then you can do the second exercise, which puts you right back in control. And that one I call is AYA, A-I-A, which is now a matter of awareness. Awareness of my thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, or the behaviors that I've just taken, or the one I'm afraid to take. And in a pure state of awareness without judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification. Let me repeat, without any judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification of the feeling or the thought or the behavior, now I'm empowered again because now I can observe. And now in this observational mode, I could say, okay, what's my intention, let's say for the next 10 minutes? Well, my intention is to be happy. Great. My intention is to be productive. Great. My intention is to, take action on this one thing that's going to help me towards my goal and dream. So in the awareness and in the intention, then if I say, what's one small action step I could take towards what I want instead of what I don't want? So all of a sudden, I've interrupted a fear pattern. I've created this state of awareness, I've set an intention, and now I'm taking action towards what I want versus being paralyzed by what I don't want and a fear that may or may not be real. So awareness is what actually gives us choice, and choice is what actually gives us freedom if we make the right choices.
So good. So guys, the reason I wanted John on was because these are actionable steps that you could take. You need to go get exercise because these are actual exercises that'll change your life. And I love how John arrived at this space. I want to go back because we just got pretty heavy there.
Yeah.
And now I want to go to a little bit of a lighter space, but both of you and I have had mentors that have entered our life. We didn't come from perfect families, loving families, both of us, but not perfect families. And by the way, I don't know that exists.
Well, yeah, I think that, a dysfunction is normal. Functional, right. That's normal. Right. If you had a functional family, that's not normal.
That's not normal, right. And I guess to the extent that the dysfunction you experience is probably part of these things we have to undo.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about beliefs in that regard in a minute. But you're this guy, Mr. Brown. I've heard about Mr. Brown for years. But it's hard to imagine a man who's become a multi-millionaire. I mean, just so you know, John's built 5-6 different multi-million-dollar companies. One of them was on $4 billion in revenue. He's taken a company public on NASDAQ. I mean, he's a very accomplished man here. But Mr. Brown was one of the catalysts for that. John was kind of a screwed up youth there for a while, making some bad choices. And you have this moment where you're talking about goals with him.
Yeah.
And he asked you this incredibly powerful question. And honestly, I've been in the space 30 years. I've worked on myself a great deal. I understand the mechanics of the mind, but sometimes the most basic things have the most deep impact on us in our lives. When I read this story, I must have told this story probably 35 times the last 2 weeks to people. So if you'd share that, I'd really appreciate it.
So if the person watching or listening can imagine a 19-year-old kid working in a shipping department of a warehouse, hating my job at $1.65 an hour back in 1980. This is April of 1980. On the side, I'm selling drugs. On the side, I'm doing breaking and entries. On the side, I'm part of a small little group of kids who got adept at shoplifting and doing all these stupid things as a kid. And I knew that my life was either going to, I'm going to go to jail or the morgue at that time. One of the two was going to happen because we were doing some pretty heavy stuff at the time. It was just getting more and more and more advanced and more riskier. So my brother, who's a tennis pro and a coach at the time, asked me to come from Montreal to Toronto to meet one of his clients. And his client's name is Mr. Alan Brown. So I took the train 350 miles for lunch with this guy and to see my brother for the weekend. And as I, went into, I went right from the train station to lunch. My brother introduced me to Mr. Brown, and he's cordial, very, very nice man, very kind. He asked me, so what are some of your goals? I said, I'd love to buy a car. I'd like to move out of my parents' house. I'd like to get a better job because I'm not making enough money doing that. And he says, well, I understand you're also getting yourself into a lot of trouble. I was like, I am a little embarrassed now that my brother told him all this. And he said, listen, what are some of your bigger goals and dreams? I said, well, I don't know what you mean. He said, listen, having food on the table and wanting to buy a car and all that stuff, that's all nice and dandy, but what do you want to do with your life? And I have no idea, I said. And so he gave me this document, this sheet. It was the 1980 goal setting guide. And on it said, at what age do you want to retire? How much net worth do you want to have? How much money do you want to make a year? What kind of lifestyle do you want? What kind of charitable things do you want to do? I'm like, what the F is this? I'm 19 years old. When do I want to retire? I want to get a damn good job. Forget about retire. Right. So he said, listen, take a few minutes and go and write this stuff out. So I sat there and I wrote, I want to retire at age 45. My net worth, I want it to be $3 million. I want to make $250,000 a year. I want a Mercedes-Benz. I want a house in the, at the beach. And I just started rifling off this stuff. And I gave him back the document. And he goes, these are some really good ideas you have over here. So where'd you get these ideas? I said, well, I like watching the TV show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And Robin Leach shows all these nice homes, kind of like your lifestyle, Ed. And I said, I want that kind of a lifestyle. And he says, listen, son, he says, all of this is possible, but I'm going to ask you one question, and the answer to this one question will determine whether you have it or you don't. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, come on, give me a break. One question? So I said, sure, Mr. Brown, fire away. So he says, are you interested in having this kind of lifestyle and achieving these things, or are you committed? And I said, Mr. Brown, what's the difference? And he said to me, he said, son, he says, if you're interested, you'll do what's easy and convenient. If you're interested, you'll allow your stories and your excuses and the fact you went to grade 11 and left school and the fact that your father's a cab driver and your mother's a seamstress at a store. You'll come up with all of the stories and reasons and excuses why you can't. He says, if you're interested, all of the obstacles will be bigger than your vision and your goals. He said, but if you are committed, you will do whatever it takes. You will upgrade your knowledge. You will upgrade your skills. You'll develop the beliefs and the habits to match the vision and the goals. He said, so son, which are you? And I said, a little scared, I said, well, Mr. Brown, I'm committed. And he just smiled. He reached out his hand to me, Ed, and he says, in that case, son, I will be your mentor.
Oh boy, that's so good.
And I was like, wow, that's great. What does that mean? He goes, well, I will teach you because I've made all of these goals that you want to have already. I've already done those 10 times over. He says, the first thing I need you to do, I need you to move from Montreal, where you live now, to Toronto. And I said, move from Montreal to Toronto? I don't have a car. I don't have a job in Toronto. I gave him all these excuses. He said, stop. He says, there you go, already giving me excuses. I said, I know, but this is the truth.
Right, you don't know.
Right? He says, son, he says, here's your first lesson. First, you set the goal. You make a commitment to achieve the goal. Then you figure out how you're going to do it. So I said, fine, I'll move to Toronto.
Okay.
And he says to me, great. The second thing I want you to do is on May the 5th, there's a new real estate class that starts. It's a 5-week course, 9 to 5. I want you to enroll in it. It's $500. I said, excuse me? I said, $500, and you want me to go back to school? I failed English, I failed math, they kicked me out, I was happy, they were happier, I don't have the money. He says, there you go again. Look how fast you go back to your story. And so I'm like, Mr. Brown, I'm not very smart in school. I didn't do well in school. And I started to give him the story again. He goes, stop it. Are you interested or are you committed? I said, I already said I'm committed. He says, good, then make the decision. We'll figure out all the rest afterwards.
Oh, so good.
Long story short, Ed, I made a commitment. I said, fine, I'll do it. My brother said, I'll lend you $100. I had $60 in the bank.
Found a way.
My lent me some money. My father lent me some money. May the 5th, 1980, okay, 40 years ago, I got my first day in real estate school. 5 weeks later, I passed the test. And some people may wonder, how do you remember these dates so clearly 40 years ago? And the answer was, on June the 20th, 1980, I passed the test on my own.
You remember that?
Ed, I cheated to get out of high school. One of my friends gave me the answers to all 50 questions on a multiple choice so I could get out of high school.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
this was the first test I passed on my own.
And here it is 40 years later, and it affects you right now telling that story.
Yeah, it's like, it was the first time I felt proud.
Wow, brother. That's, wow. You guys, 40 years later, millions of
First time I felt proud.
millions of people helped, and it still affects this man to this day. And you should be asking yourselves right now, what a great story. You guys, are you interested or are you committed? I made a video today. It's not going to be out for a couple of days, but I made a video today about dreams. And I think people sometimes think, I don't have a plan, so it disqualifies me from the dream. That's not the case. My biggest dreams, we always want a plan and a strategy. But my biggest dreams, I had no flipping clue how I was going to get to them. No clue. And what happened was, though, if I got committed to them instead of interested in them, the people, places, things, situations, circumstances begin to reveal themselves, and you find them. You attract them. It's part of the secret that I learned many years ago from some guy. I forget his name. Oh, there he is in front of me. So you're 100% right, guys. And so you got to ask yourself, are you interested or are you committed to what your dreams and your goals are? There's this thing you touched on there about beliefs. And it's another place where I consider you a guru. It was about the beliefs, the subconscious brain to the subconscious mind. There's a difference between those two things too, everybody. But you have this great thing where you took your real estate agents that were doing a certain level of production and you worked on their subconscious. So tell them a little bit about that, and then talk to us about beliefs. How powerful are they? What are they? Why do they matter?
So I'll start with the story first, and then I'll share beliefs and then what to do. So we have some practical things that you can start doing today.
Yeah.
So back in 1987, when I bought the franchising rights for RE/MAX of Indiana, I had no idea how to build a company. I was 26 years old. But I had another mentor who I invested $75,000 to become his partner, to have the opportunity to learn from this man who at the time was worth probably $100 million. And so I was very, very keen on learning, and I didn't know how to build a business. I didn't know anything other than how to sell real estate. And I set a goal to generate $1 billion a year in sales. And I set the goal for 5 years in the future, not knowing $1 billion goal is like mind-boggling big for me. And there was an interview the second week I was in Indianapolis. I moved from Toronto to Indianapolis for this opportunity. And I was interviewed by the Indianapolis Business Journal. And I said in the interview that I had a goal for $1 billion. And the reporter said, are you aware that there's two companies that have been in the state of Indiana for 80 years, one, 100 years, the other one, and they haven't hit $1 billion in real estate sales in all of these years? And I said, yeah, I know, it's Graves and Tucker, and you can let them know that I'll be the first, right? And as I said that, I almost felt like I put my foot right in my mouth because I didn't know how I was going to do it.
Right.
Long story short, 5 years later, we sold enough franchise, recruited enough agents. We did $1.2 billion, and we were stuck, which is a great place to be stuck. And I was asking myself, how is it possible that I'm training these agents with strategies, with tactics, with selling skills, marketing skills? We were like the gurus of here's the books, here's the cassettes, here's the trainers, here's like out of the deep end. And the agents who, for example, would make $30,000 a year kept making $30,000 a year. The agents who made 50 kept making 50. The agents who made 100 kept making 100. And so I realized that they weren't missing the skills or the knowledge. There was something else at play. And what helped me from the age of 19 to 27, 28, 30 was every single day, and I still do it today, and I'll share this with you in just a little bit. Every single day, I was priming my brain with the beliefs and the self-image required to achieve the goals that I wanted. So I got 75 agents together who agreed to pay $3,000 each to be part of an inner game training. Forget the outer game, the inner game training. We worked on affirmations, visualization, mindfulness, meditation, listening to our affirmations and our vision on our cassette recorders. We had little cassettes we put in our cars. And so I had them work on their self-image and self-worth and self-esteem and to develop the beliefs that we were going to imprint or impregnate into their subconscious mind by listening to these audios every single day, twice a day, and while they were driving. And those 75 agents over 6 months increased sales by $100 million.
My gosh.
We didn't teach them one thing about selling more.
Wow.
We taught them about changing their identity and their belief structure so that it matched the goals they wanted to achieve. And then I said, holy shit, this works even for other people, not just me. So we started to teach that to all of our agents. And we created these cassettes with these recordings on them of the beliefs that we needed them to believe, the self-image that they deserved, that they were good enough, they were smart enough. And we went from 1.2 billion to 4.5 billion a year.
Wow.
Within 4 years.
Wow. And that's by beliefs. And so, guys, that's a ballistic.
A little bit of beliefs and believing in a new self-image and identity and a new story.
Gosh, so good. Now, you're going to tell us about beliefs, what they are.
Yeah. So if you think of, so when you were you born with any beliefs?
No.
Were you born with any habits?
No.
Were you born with any fears?
No.
No. So from a neuroscience and neuropsychology perspective, a belief is nothing more than this. Imagine that you're born and your brain's made up of 100 billion marbles. And every time you have an experience or somebody says something to you, you read something or you watch something, these marbles make these connections. And the connections that are reinforced go from conscious connections to subconscious connections. And once these subconscious connections are made and reinforced, they run the show 98% of the time. So a belief is nothing more than a reinforced pattern in the brain. And our conscious brain can choose what we want when we're in that part of our brain, but our subconscious mind can't choose. It's programmed from the age of 0 to 3 in the imprinting years, 3 to about 7 or 8 the modeling years, and then 8 on, it's the experiential years. And so if you have these powerful beliefs that you're good enough, you're smart enough, you're worthy to achieve the goals that you have, if you have these powerful beliefs, you are able to achieve any amount of income you choose, no matter what the amount is, you just need to learn how. So if you have these empowering beliefs, you have brain coherence between conscious and subconscious.
Bam.
What if you said, okay, I want to make, let's just say $100,000 a year or $1 million. It doesn't make a difference. And I asked you, what do you need to believe about yourself to achieve it? So I need to believe I'm smart enough. Good. Write down, I am smart enough. What else do you need to believe? I need to believe that I am worthy. I need to believe that I deserve this. I need to believe that it's possible. I need to believe, you write down 5 or 6 or 7 beliefs that are just words on a sheet of paper. Now, let me stop for just a moment. I'm going to tell a story and come back to this. I want you to imagine that somebody tapped you on the shoulder sometime today and say, hey, I work with Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks in Hollywood, and we have this new script, okay, that if you get really good at this script where you could read it in front of a camera without the script, we'll pay you $10 million. Now, I want you to imagine you've never seen the script, you don't know how to act, but they said to you, We're going to give you an acting coach. We're going to give you everything you need to memorize the script. We're going to give you everything you need to act it perfectly. What would you do to take that script that's on a piece of paper that you've never seen before? What would you do to take that script to make it yours, for you to own it? And the answer is you'd probably read it like what, once? Would you read it maybe 100 times, 200 times, 500 times? You think you might role play with somebody while you're holding the script in your hand? Do you think you might research the role? Do you think you might take a camera and practice it? And do you think that if you practice it 1 time, 50 times, 100 times, 500 times, you can finally put the script down and you can get in front of the camera and go, boom, here is the script. Do you think you could do that? Well, guess what? A script that's on a piece of paper that you don't believe, with practice, you start to believe. So what happens if you take a belief system and you start to imprint it into your subconscious mind, initially through conscious repetition. But there are ways to access the subconscious mind that we know today that are faster and easier than just doing it consciously. And so you take a vision of you achieving your goals and dreams. You take the beliefs you need. You learn how to manage your emotions a little bit better. And then you develop the habits, which again are nothing more than neural patterns in the brain that have been reinforced. And when you learn how to deactivate the destructive ones and activate constructive ones through spaced repetition and reinforcement, now you are resetting your default way of being. Oh. So a belief is nothing more than a reinforced pattern that if you learn how to deactivate it and create a new one, it's like a software upgrade for your brain.
Wow. So guys, what he didn't say, so good, John. Thank you. Guys, this is stuff that you pay thousands of dollars for, but you, by the way, can get in his book and you get here because I know him for free. But guys, what he didn't say is beliefs are necessarily true.
No, don't
believe your version of the truth. And this is important. You know, I've told you many times, everybody, that your thoughts aren't necessarily true. Your beliefs are not necessarily true. They're patterns reinforced over time. And so if you could create this new script that's reinforcing these patterns over time, that's a conscious way of doing it. Give us one key. He said, we know now there's subconscious ways to do it that are faster and more powerful. Give us one that is a new hack to do this.
So one that everybody's heard of and very few people do, unless you're a professional athlete, astronaut, or Navy SEAL, is visual. Visualization.
Yes, thank you.
Simple. I know you had Phil Mickelson on in the past, and I watched him. And if you think about visualization, is simulation. Now, here is the difference.
Whoa, that's good. Okay, go ahead.
So visualization is simulation. So when we close our eyes, or even if our eyes are open, and we start to use our Einstein brain, the imagination, we now have just activated one of the biggest centers of our brain, the occipital lobe, that's connected to the motor cortex. It's connected to the motivational circuit, the nucleus accumbens, that releases that dopamine that makes you feel good, that makes you want to take action. So if you visualize yourself achieving the goal, if you visualize yourself behaving in ways that match the new belief, if you even visualize the words, or you take the words on a sheet of paper, and you read them, run your right finger across it, run your left finger across it, close your eyes, see it and feel it, your brain is creating a mental movie with the words. And as it creates a mental movie with the words, that's happening in your subconscious mind. And when you give the subconscious these instructions, a couple things happen because of the way the brain hierarchy works. Number one is survival, but then number two is safety, and then number three is energy conservation. Now, when you do something 20, 30, 40, 50 times, it takes about 66 days to 365 days of repetition to override an old habitual circuit. Not 10 days, not 21 days, 66 to 365. So if you visualize yourself achieving the goal, feeling the success that you want to feel, seeing the belief on the screen of your mind, you are actually creating a neural network through the science of neuroplasticity, and the networks that you reinforce become the most dominant networks. And since your brain wants to conserve energy, if you do this on a consistent basis, your brain says, okay, you're doing this so often, let me just make this automatic. Let me set aside the old beliefs. Let me replace it with the new beliefs. And now you've deliberately and consciously evolved yourself.
Oh my gosh. So guys, it's patterns. John, thank you. Guys, John used a word earlier, which was coherence, and it can fly by. But when you've done this hard work, and I say fun work, by the way, on your subconscious brain, on your subconscious